My name is Austin, 35 years old, and I once thought I had the whole world in my hands. A stable job at a financial company in Chicago, a salary sufficient to buy a house, take summer vacations in Florida, and save a little for the future. Sarah, my wife, always beamed with pride when telling her friends about her husband who knows how to provide. Emma, our 8-year-old daughter, was the light of my life, with a smile that melted away all my fatigue. But deep inside me there was a smoldering fire, a question that kept echoing, is this all I want? I grew up in a family that viewed stability as the ultimate truth. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, always took pride in never taking risks. Work hard, hold on to your job, and don't chase pipe dreams, my father would say every time I mentioned the idea of starting my own business. My mother was gentler, but her eyes always betrayed a sense of worry, as if dreams were something dangerous, capable of dragging me into an abyss. Derek, my younger brother, was their ideal model, an honors graduate, a stable job at a law firm, and now the fiancé of Natalie, a talented lawyer. I loved Derek, but sometimes his perfection made me feel like a faint shadow in comparison. 4 years ago, I decided to listen to the fire within me. I quit my job, poured all my savings, and even took out a bank loan to start a small tech company. My idea was an app to connect small businesses with local customers. Simple but full of potential, or so I believed. Sarah supported me, though she was anxious. "Are you sure, Austin?" she asked, her eyes reflecting both faith and fear. I nodded, squeezing her hand. "This is our chance." But that chance never came. The company failed. The market was too harsh, the competitors were stronger, and I lacked experience. I tried my hardest, working 18 hours a day, making desperate calls to investors, but every door slammed shut. Our savings dried up, and the loan became a crushing burden. Sarah began to grow distant. Arguments erupted, small at first, then increasingly heated. "You promised to take care of this family," she shouted one night as bills piled up on the table. I didn't respond because she was right. I had failed. In the end, Sarah separated from me, taking Emma to her mother's house. "I need time, Austin," she said, her voice weary. Emma hugged me before leaving, whispering, "I love you, Dad." I smiled, but my heart shattered. I moved into a small apartment with stained walls and a musty smell. Every night I sat on an old chair staring at my laptop screen, trying to find a way to revive the company, but all I met was disappointment. I didn't just lose money, I lost my family, and my parents didn't miss the chance to remind me of my failure. "You should have listened to me," my father said over the phone, his voice ice cold. "Now look at you. Nothing left." My mother sighed, as if I were a stain on the family legacy. They compared me to Derek, who always did everything right. "Why can't you be like your brother?" my mother asked, and I stayed silent because I didn't know how to answer. I started avoiding my family. For gatherings, I made excuses about being busy. For phone calls, I let the ringer go unanswered, but I couldn't avoid them forever. One day, Derek called, his voice brimming with excitement. "Bro, I'm getting married. Natalie said yes, I want you at the wedding. You have to come, okay?" I forced a smile, though my heart ached. Derek was always like that, pulling me into his dazzling world as if I belonged there. "Congrats, man," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll be there, Derek. Wouldn't miss your big day." He laughed heartily, talking about Natalie and their wedding plans, and I listened, nodding along, though my mind was drifting elsewhere. After the call, I sat in my dimly lit apartment, the streetlight filtering through the window, casting shadows on the stained walls. A wedding. A simple word, but to me it felt like a doorway to an arena. My family would be there with their judgmental stares and whispers behind my back. "Austin, the failure," they'd say, as they had so many times before. I pictured myself standing in the reception hall wearing an old, worn-out suit, forcing a smile to mask my shame. But then I thought of Derek, my little brother, the only one in the family who never looked at me with pity. I owed him. The next morning, the phone rang again. This time it was my father. His voice was cold, like he was reading a verdict. "Austin, you don't need to come to the wedding." I froze, my hand tightening around the phone. The bride's family is full of respectable people, he continued. If you show up, you'll only embarrass us. My mother chimed in, her voice softer but sharp as a blade. You understand what we mean, don't you? Don't put Derek in an awkward position. I wanted to scream, to ask why they always saw me as a burden, but all I said was, yes. Their words, brief as they were, cut deep into my self-respect. I sank into the chair, my hands trembling, staring out the window. Suddenly, a memory pulled me back to 4 years ago, the day I stood in my parents' living room, facing the entire family in a meeting as tense as a taut wire. I had just announced that I was quitting my job at the financial firm to start a tech company. The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted. You've lost your mind, Austin, my father roared, his face flushed with anger. A stable job, good pay, and you're throwing it away for some pipe dream? My mother sat nearby, gripping her chair tightly, her eyes brimming with tears. Think about Sarah, about Emma, she said, her voice trembling. Do you want them to suffer because of you? Derek, who had just started at the law firm, stood with his arms crossed, shaking his head. Bro, I know you want to do something big, but this is too risky. Listen to Mom and Dad. His tone was gentle, but his eyes, the pity in them, hurt more than my father's reprimands. I stood there, my heart pounding, trying to keep my voice calm. I believe in this idea, I said. I don't want to live my whole life just playing it safe. My father cut me off, pointing at me. Safety is what keeps this family standing. If you want to ruin everything, don't drag us down with you, my mother cried. Derek stayed silent, and I felt like a traitor. Sarah held my hand, whispering, I believe in you. But even in her eyes, I saw fear. The room felt suffocating, like it was choking me. I left, carrying my father's warning. You'll regret this. And when the company failed, his words became a curse, weighing on me every night. Those painful memories made me want to give up. If I didn't go, I could avoid the stares, the snide remarks. But not going would mean missing the chance to prove I was still part of the family, even if they didn't want to acknowledge it. And Emma, my daughter, would be there. Sarah had agreed to let Emma come with me. I pictured her smile, the way she'd grab my hand and call out, Daddy, in the crowd. I couldn't let Emma see her father running away. I stood up, opened the closet, and pulled out my suit. It was old, but it still fit. I smoothed out the wrinkles, looking at myself in the mirror. My face was gaunt, my eyes tired, but I told myself I'm going. For Derek, for Emma, and for me. I didn't know what the wedding would bring, but I knew I couldn't keep living like a ghost. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the apartment carrying a fragile sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could find my place again. On the day of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my tie for the 10th time. The old suit had worn shoulders, but I'd done my best to polish my shoes to look more presentable. Emma stood beside me, twirling in her pink dress, beaming with a radiant smile. Dad, you look so handsome, she said, and I leaned down to kiss her forehead, my heart feeling a little lighter. Emma was the reason I was here, the light in my darkest days. You're the prettiest one, I replied, taking her hand as we stepped out of the apartment. The wedding venue on the outskirts of Chicago was more glamorous than I'd imagined. Chandeliers sparkled, fresh flowers lined the walkways, and soft music floated from a live orchestra. I felt out of place from the moment I stepped inside. The guests, dressed in elegant suits and evening gowns, chatted animatedly while I just wanted to shrink away. I led Emma to a table at the back of the hall near the exit where we'd draw less attention. Dad, why aren't we sitting closer to Uncle Derek? Emma asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. It's more comfortable here for us, I said, forcing a smile. In truth, I just wanted to avoid my parents' gazes and those of anyone who knew the story of Austin the failure. I sat down, pulling out a chair for Emma. She was thrilled, looking around excitedly, pointing at the clusters of balloons and the towering wedding cake. Dad, will Uncle Derek have another party after the wedding? She asked, and I chuckled, momentarily forgetting my anxiety. Probably not, but I'll get you some ice cream after the reception, deal? Emma nodded, grabbing my hand, and I felt a touch of warmth in the unfamiliar atmosphere. From a distance, I watched Derek. My little brother stood in the middle of the crowd, grinning brightly next to Natalie, who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. My parents were nearby, proudly boasting about their golden child. I caught my mother glancing my way, her eyes flickering with a hint of displeasure before she turned away as if I didn't exist. I lowered my head, pretending to adjust the napkin, trying to suppress the wave of alienation washing over me. I'm only here for Derek, I told myself. Stay, don't cause a scene, and leave. Emma started talking about school, the neighbor's cat, and I listened, nodding along as if the world beyond our table didn't exist. But every loud laugh from the crowd, every fleeting glance in my direction made me shrink further. I didn't belong here, no longer the Austin Pierce of old, the one who confidently shook hands with business partners and told jokes at parties. I was just a failure, trying not to break anything else. The wedding went smoothly, at least for me, until Derek stepped onto the stage and picked up the microphone. He looked radiant in his tuxedo, his confident smile as bright as ever. "Thank you all for coming," Derek began, his voice resonating through the hall. The guests clapped and I joined in, though my hands trembled slightly. I just wanted this speech to end quickly so Emma and I could slip away unnoticed. But then Derek looked directly at me. "There's someone special I'd like to invite up here," he said, and my heart clenched. "My brother, Austin Carter." The hall erupted in applause, but I wished the floor would swallow me whole. Emma, sitting beside me, her eyes lighting up, tugged at my hand. "Dad, Uncle Derek's calling you." I took a deep breath, looking at her. "Do you want to come up with me?" I asked, my voice shaky. Emma nodded immediately, her smile radiant. "Yes." She gripped my hand tightly and I felt a flicker of courage stir within me. With Emma by my side, I walked to the stage, each step heavy but steadier thanks to her small hand in mine. There we stood, I in my worn-out suit, Emma in her pink dress, still holding my hand tightly. The guests clapped, some smiling at Emma, and for a fleeting moment I thought everything might be okay. Derek clapped me on the shoulder, but his smile no longer felt warm. "Everyone, this is my brother, the great entrepreneur." He emphasized the word, and the first ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. I tightened my grip on Emma's hand, feeling the ground shift beneath me. "Austin quit a stable job to chase a pipe dream," Derek continued, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "And the result? Bankruptcy, lost money, lost his family, right, bro?" The hall laughed louder. I glanced at my parents, hoping for a supportive look, but my mother only smirked, and my father nodded, saying loud enough for those nearby to hear, "Serves him right for not listening." The laughter swelled again, each chuckle like a knife slicing into my heart. I looked down at Emma. She stood close to me, her eyes wide and confused. "Dad, why are they laughing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The greatest pain wasn't Derek's mockery or my parents' smug satisfaction. It was seeing my daughter hurt. Emma gripped my hand tighter as if trying to protect me, but it was I who needed to protect her. I wanted to scoop her up, to run from this place, but I stood still, clinging to what little dignity I had left. I didn't want her to think her father was weak. Derek went on, turning my mistakes into a punchline. "Look at him dragging Emma up here, probably hoping for some pity." He laughed, and the crowd laughed with him. Emma lowered her head, her hair hiding her face, and I felt my heart shatter. I placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "I'm okay. Don't be scared." But I wasn't okay. I was powerless, standing under the spotlight amidst the laughter, with my little girl beside me, both of us exposed to the world's judgment. Then suddenly the sound of a chair scraping against the floor cut through the laughter. I looked up and saw Natalie standing. The bride, resplendent in her white gown, strode quickly toward the stage, her eyes blazing. The hall fell silent. Derek stopped speaking, his smile freezing on his face. Natalie snatched the microphone from his hand with a decisive motion that startled a few guests. She looked straight at me, then at Emma, and in her eyes I saw not pity but a fierce fire. "Austin," Natalie said, her voice ringing out clear and resolute, I've never told you this, but your courage has inspired me." The hall was so quiet you could hear someone's sharp intake of breath. I stood frozen, unable to believe my ears. Emma looked up, her eyes wide, gazing at Natalie as if she were a superhero. "He dared to give up safety to chase his dream," Natalie continued, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "He failed, yes, but he didn't give up. That's something not everyone can do." She turned to Derek, her gaze sharp as a blade. "And you, Derek, you turned our wedding into a stage to mock your own brother. Do you think that makes you stronger?" Derek opened his mouth, but no words came out. Natalie didn't stop. She looked toward my parents, who sat rigid at the front table. "And Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I once respected you, but today I see clearly that you value appearances over family. Laughing at your own son's pain, does that make you proud?" My mother lowered her head. My father's face flushed, but neither dared to respond. Natalie turned back to me, her voice softening. "Austin, you're not a failure. You're someone who dared to live true to himself. And Emma," she knelt down, smiling at my daughter, "you have an incredible father." Emma smiled, though her eyes were still wet, and I felt a wave of warmth seep into my cold heart. Natalie set the microphone down, her gaze sweeping the hall. "I can't go forward with a family that disrespects its own," she said, her voice unwavering. Then she stepped down, her white dress billowing, leaving the stage and a stunned Derek behind. The hall enveloped in a deathly silence. I watched her go, my heart flooded with a mix of emotions, gratitude, shame, and a glimmer of hope. For the first time in a long while, I felt I wasn't alone. Natalie left the stage, her figure in the white gown disappearing through the doors of the hall. Her footsteps echoed decisively like an irrevocable declaration. I stood there, clutching Emma's hand, feeling as though I'd been pulled back from the edge of an abyss. My daughter looked up at me, her eyes sparkling, and whispered, "Aunt Natalie was right, Dad. You're amazing." I smiled, though my throat tightened. Emma's words were a flame warming my heart amidst the storm. The hall sank into an awkward silence. The laughter from moments ago had died, replaced by averted gazes and hands nervously fidgeting with napkins. Derek stood frozen on the stage, the microphone hanging limply in his hand, his confident smile gone. He stared after Natalie, his face pale, then suddenly bolted down, chasing after her. "Natalie, wait!" His voice rang out, lost in the deathly quiet. I saw Natalie pause at the threshold, turning back. Derek reached for her arm, his voice pleading. "Babe, I'm sorry, I was just joking." But Natalie yanked her arm away, her eyes icy. "Joking? You humiliated your own brother in front of everyone, Derek. That's not a joke, it's cruelty." She stepped back, her white dress billowing. "I can't marry someone like you." Then she turned and walked away, leaving Derek standing there, his hands falling to his sides like a shattered statue. The hall remained silent. My parents sat at the front table, their faces flushed. My mother bowed her head, her hands gripping the tablecloth, while my father stared straight ahead, but the smugness in his eyes was gone. The guests around them whispered, some shaking their heads. Why would he do that to his brother? What kind of wedding is this? I caught fragments of their murmurs. No one laughed anymore. No one dared meet my eyes. I took Emma's hand and led her off the stage. With each step, I felt the guests' eyes following us, but this time it wasn't mockery. Some nodded at me, a subtle gesture as if seeing me in a new light. In that moment, I was no longer the failure. I was Austin, the man who stood tall, even when the world turned its back on him. As we reached the exit, an older woman, likely a friend of Natalie's, stopped me. "You're a strong man," she said, her voice sincere. "Don't let them make you think otherwise." I smiled, thanking her. But in my heart, I knew the most important thing was Emma. She held my hand, no longer trembling, and I realized I didn't need the approval of the room. I just needed my daughter to see that her father didn't crumble. The doors of the reception hall closed behind us, but their echo seemed to follow me and Emma all the way to the car. She was quiet, unlike her earlier chatter, but her small hand still clung tightly to mine. "Dad," "Will Aunt Natalie be okay?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with worry. I stopped, knelt down, and looked into her eyes. "She's strong, Emma, and I believe good things will come to her." Emma smiled, wrapping her arms around me, and I felt a piece of my heart mend. The next day, Chicago buzzed with news of the canceled wedding. Derek posted a status on social media trying to justify it as an unintentional joke, but no one bought it. The comments piled up, condemning him as heartless. A secretly recorded video of Natalie's speech spread like wildfire, racking up thousands of views. In it, her voice rang out steadfastly, defending me and Emma, condemning Derek and my parents. The internet rallied behind her, sharing my story, the man who dared to dream big even if he failed. I read the comments, my heart a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. For the first time, I wasn't just the failure. A few days later, my parents called, their voices full of blame. "You ruined your brother's wedding," my father said, as if I were the one who'd grabbed the microphone to mock someone. "Why didn't you just stay quiet and take it?" my mother added, her tone bitter. I took a deep breath, refusing to let their words drag me down for the first time. "I'm done being the family's punching bag," I said, my voice calm but firm. "If you can't respect me, don't call again." I hung up, my heart pounding, but not with fear. I felt free. One morning, I received a short email from Natalie. "Austin, you're an inspiration. Don't give up. Emma needs you, and the world needs people like you." I read it over and over, tears silently falling. Natalie hadn't just saved me from humiliation that night. She'd shown me my own worth. I replied, thanking her and promising not to give up. Though she and Derek had parted ways, I knew Natalie would find the happiness her strong heart deserved. Natalie's video didn't just change how people saw me. It breathed life into my small tech company. In the days following the wedding, my phone started ringing. An investor from Chicago reached out saying they were impressed by my story. "We need people with your spirit," he said. I could hardly believe it. Then 2 more investors called. They didn't just see potential in my app, they saw value in my perseverance. I poured everything into restarting the project. Sleepless nights, tense meetings, but this time I wasn't alone. My small team, the ones who'd stayed even when I couldn't pay them, now worked with renewed passion. "Boss, we're going to make it," one employee said, and I nodded, believing for the first time that it could happen. 6 months later, we launched a new version of the app, connecting small businesses with local customers more effectively than ever. Revenue started to climb, slowly but steadily. A feature in the Chicago Tribune called me the entrepreneur who overcame adversity. I read it and laughed, not out of pride, but because I never thought I'd be seen that way. This small success brought Emma closer to me. Sarah, though still keeping her distance, agreed to let me have Emma more weekends. I fixed up the apartment, buying a small bed for her. In the evenings, we ate pizza, watched cartoons, and I told her about the company. "Dad, you make an app to help people, right?" she asked, and I nodded, my heart warming. Emma was my greatest motivation, and I wanted her to be proud of her father. As for my parents, after that fateful wedding night, their lives became strained under the scrutiny of those around them. The Carters, once proud of their flawless family image, became the talk of Chicago. Old friends, neighbors, even distant relatives whispered about that shameful night. Sarah told me my mother stopped hosting her usual weekend gatherings. She shut herself in the house, avoiding prying eyes. My father, for whom appearances were everything, grew more irritable. He spoke little, muttering about the ruined wedding whenever someone mentioned Derek. Derek took the hardest hit. After his failed attempt to justify himself online, he deleted his social media accounts, but the stain wasn't easily erased. Natalie's video spread everywhere, shattering the golden boy image Derek had cultivated. Colleagues at his law firm began to distance themselves, some bluntly calling him lacking character. Major clients pulled contracts, and Derek was demoted, a heavy blow for someone who'd always basked in the spotlight. I heard he tried reaching out to Natalie, sending dozens of apologetic messages, but she didn't respond. Natalie moved to New York, starting a new life, And Derek, for the first time, had to face the consequences of his actions. I didn't see them, didn't call, didn't visit. Not out of anger, but because I needed to protect Emma and myself. But sometimes, sitting alone in my apartment, I thought of Derek. He was once my little brother, the one I taught to tie a tie, the one I played basketball with in the backyard. I didn't want him to suffer, but I knew he could only grow by facing his mistakes. As for my parents, I hoped one day they'd realize family is more precious than pride, but I didn't hold my breath. I'd learned to live without their approval. Their lives were hard, but not because of me, because of their own choices. They'd built a world on comparison and judgment, and when that world collapsed, they didn't know what to do. I didn't take joy in it, but I no longer saw myself as the loser. I had Emma, my company, and myself. Enough to keep moving forward. One morning, Emma and I sat eating breakfast in the small apartment. She took a bite of toast, her eyes lighting up as she talked about a drawing assignment at school. "I drew you, Dad, standing on a mountain because you're strong," she said. And I laughed, but my heart swelled with warmth. "I'm proud because you didn't give up," she added, and I had to turn away, pretending to wipe my hands to hide a tear. In that moment, I realized my worth wasn't in my family's approval, but in Emma's love and what I'd overcome. My story isn't one of dazzling triumph. I didn't become a millionaire or build a tech empire, but I learned that courage is daring to chase a dream, whether it leads to failure or success. I fell, lost everything, but I got back up, not because I'm stronger than others, but because I couldn't let Emma see her father stay down. Natalie taught me that self-respect doesn't need validation from others, and Emma taught me that love is the most powerful motivator. Family, I realized, isn't about perfection or boasting. It's about respect, about standing up for each other as Natalie did. My family chose pride, and they lost what they tried so hard to keep. I chose the harder path, but I found freedom. Every day I work, care for Emma, and live true to myself. That's my victory. I left that wedding night with my dignity, a new chance for my career, and the belief that I don't need anyone to define me except myself and those who love me. Emma sat beside me, smiling brightly, and I knew that as long as I had her, I had the whole world.